Wow. What an incredible game that we had Monday Night Football between the Ravens and the Raiders. I was on the edge of my seat. I really love that game. That game was incredible. The Raiders pulling off that upset with their home opener with fans now fully in attendance in Las Vegas in Allegiant Stadium. Back and forth, going into overtime, and they were able to pull off the remarkable miracle upset against the Baltimore Ravens. Everybody was counting them out. I think in our polls that we took on Instagram, 70 to 80% of you guys were favoring the Ravens in that game. Hey, myself included. So once we get to weekly picks and Thursday's episode of Time to Football, we'll show you the results and how accurate everybody was at the fans and my predictions as well. But I will also say that fantasy football-wise, in my league, I had two people that one guy had Darren Waller and another guy had Lamar Jackson, and they were pretty much tied. And just to see the back and forth, the guy with Darren Waller was projected to lose. I think it was like 10%. He was projected to win, 90% the guy with Lamar Jackson. And then after Darren Waller scores a touchdown, it goes 90% in his favor, 10% in the guy in Lamar Jackson's. And then Lamar gets like a big run, pops off, and it's just like back and forth. Eventually, the guy with Darren Waller won. But it was just amazing to see that game on Monday Night Football. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. My name is Hassan Khan, the host of this show called Time2Football. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome in. Glad you guys can be joining us for this live show every Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. We like to be your daily talk show, your morning show that you guys can tune in and get your football fix. So today, and also Friday as well, you know, if you're a regular viewer on the show, Tuesdays and Fridays are all about fantasy football. Tuesdays is getting you ready for the week and trying to give you like the starts and sits, adds and drops, etc. And Friday is more, okay, let's go a little bit more in depth. What are the over and unders on some players? Whose stocks are high, whose stocks are low, that kind of sort of stuff. So usually on the show, what we do is we show you a sneak peek of the starts and sits videos that you guys love to watch, and that comes out later in the afternoon as its own separate video. Hey, I'm learning that it's a lot of responsibility to do a live show daily and create graphics with it and just be a one-man show. So being a one-man band, it can be time-consuming. So because of that, the starts and sits, I don't have that ready just yet on this episode. It will be coming out later tonight. I don't know if it's going to be coming out by 3 p.m. Eastern time that I usually like to come out with those starts and sits videos. But you can expect by Tuesday night, well before tomorrow's live show, you're going to get those starts and sits, that list. And you guys can watch that video and comment your questions as well. So if you guys are joining us in the chat, you guys are popping in right now. Feel free to leave any questions that you guys may have regarding fantasy football. But on this show, since we're not going to be showing you starts and sits this morning, and that's going to be coming out later today, what we're going to be talking about is the ads and drops. And I also want to dedicate a segment to some players that you need to sell high, buy low, or just hold on to for the time being. So we're going to get into that. But first, before we get into all that, what we do on the show every single week is we go over the NFL news and notes that's going around the league. I should say daily, not just every week. But what we got here today, as far as NFL news and notes, I think the biggest thing right now are injury news. Just still kind of recovering from this past weekend. People are getting onto the field in competitive NFL football for the very first time. So it's going to get chippy. It's going to get aggressive. But Raheem Mostert is probably the biggest name that is going to be out for a very long time. When I say very long, it's going to be half a season. So by the midpoint of the NFL regular season, he's going to be coming back. He's going to be out for at least 8 weeks. You can expect Trey Sermon, who was inactive due to a coach's decision yesterday, is going to be active. He's going to be the starting running back for the San Francisco 49ers, and we cannot wait to see him because he's going to do really well. Was a mid-round pick for the San Francisco 49ers this past NFL draft. So he's going to be coming in, taking over as the lead back. Along with that, you got Elijah Mitchell, JaMycal Hasty. We're going to be talking about all of that when we talk about fantasy football later on in the episode. You guys are continuing to chat as well, so I'm going to go ahead and answer a question. Just guys, let you guys know that this is interactive, and you guys can ask anything, and I might just take a break and answer some questions for you guys. ICTDs, nice name. I have Rodgers. Adams here. Rodgers is benched. Any word? Wait, what are you trying to say? Adams here. Rodgers is benched. Are you talking about Aaron Rodgers being benched for Jordan Love? Are you concerned about Aaron Rodgers? Because you shouldn't be. And when I get to the buy, sell, hold segment of this show, I'm going to talk about Aaron Rodgers in just a bit. So we'll be talking about Aaron Rodgers. Is Tyson Williams for real? This is by Thomas Wade of the Baltimore Ravens. 35-yard touchdown run. But I will say, the Baltimore Ravens did split a lot of shares and snaps with different running backs. You had Trenton Cannon working in there. You had Latavius Murray. And now you can expect eventually Le'Veon Bell to be involved and Devontae Freeman, if they get activated from the practice squad, that is. But we expect that to happen. Jeff Okudah, this actually happened just after we finished our live show. I think it actually happened during it. As a matter of fact, I want to say from yesterday. But Jeff Okudah, we didn't mention it yesterday, tore his Achilles and is out for the season. So a bad secondary for the Detroit Lions just got a little bit worse. Maybe this is a good thing. I don't know. Jeff Okudah just he's had some trouble adjusting to the NFL and hasn't really lived up to that top 3 pick hype just yet. But Okudah, guy that they had a lot of promise for, is going to be out for the season. Mekhi Becton, another guy that the Jets had a lot of promise for. The left tackle is going to be out for 4 to 5 weeks with a dislocated kneecap. He was carted off the field against that game against the Carolina Panthers. Now we know the timetable, 4 to 5 weeks. Nick Bosa. This is actually some encouraging news, and I just wanted to throw it out there. Nick Bosa of the San Francisco 49ers says that Penei Sewell will be really good in the NFL. I know that there's been a lot of talk about Sewell. He may need some time to adjust, transitioning from one side of the offensive line to the other side. It might be a little bit of a learning curve and getting used to the speed of the NFL as well. But hey, if one of the best defensive backs in the NFL says that you're going to be freaking good in the NFL, that's a lot of high praise for Penei Sewell. So be on the lookout for a guy that's up and coming like Sewell. Sam Darnold feels no vindication in beating the Jets. He's a nice guy. He could have taken any opportunity that he had to trash the Jets for releasing him or trading him at least. He didn't. He went into the game saying, there's no hard feelings. Nah, it's not emotional. It's just business. Came out on top after the game and said, yeah, I doubled down on that. Hey, Sam Darnold, good guy. The 49ers signed Dre Kirkpatrick, who is the last played for the Arizona Cardinals. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals in the first round. And now the 49ers have high hopes to replace Jason Verrett, who unfortunately suffered a torn ACL yesterday or in that game. And it was announced yesterday that he suffered a torn ACL. So Kirkpatrick signed for depth. And the last little bit of news that I wanted to mention, Kenny Stills signed to the Saints practice squad. Reunion for Kenny Stills and the Saints, who need some wide receiver depth. By the way that they looked on Sunday against the Packers, doesn't seem like it, but you would still want as much depth as possible. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition into our ads and drops segment of the week. So usually I like to come out with all these cool graphics and, just do a little voiceover and narration over these graphics. But thing is, making graphics is kind of time consuming. It kind of got to me. Time kind of caught up to me. So I didn't have the time to create the graphics, but I still wanted to do this. I still have a list of players that you need to add and drop. So I'm going to mention 3 players or 6 players at each position. 3 players that you need to add, 3 players that you need to drop at each position. So I'm going to go ahead and go over this list to kind of give you guys an idea of who I think are the big hot waiver wire pickups. For you guys that have like fab and fantasy football as well, where you start off with a budget 100, 150, 200, this is the week that if there is a player out there that is going to be legitimate for weeks to come, you may want to go ahead and take that opportunity to spend a lot of money. I'm talking about 20, 25, 30 bucks on these players, especially running backs, because running backs are so valuable. You need to drop 30 bucks, 35 bucks on these guys. All right, so for quarterbacks, the ads that I have, I'm going to mention 6 players at quarterbacks. I said 3 ads, 3 drops. I'm going to do 4 ads and 2 drops just because it's early. We don't know, who's really bad enough to drop just yet. So I'm going to mention 4 players that kind of went undrafted and you may want to pick them up. Number 1, Jameis Winston. He threw 5 touchdowns. Yardage wasn't there, but against the Green Bay Packers, he looked legit. Jameis Winston, ad number 1 at quarterback. Ad number 2, Trey Lance, owned in 30% of fantasy football leagues. He's going to be working in there with Jimmy Garoppolo in the San Francisco 49ers offense. We saw that last Sunday. So Trey Lance, owned in 30% of leagues. You may want to pick him up. And Kirk Cousins, also another guy. He had a good game against the Cincinnati Bengals. People kind of sleep on him just because he doesn't have that rushing ability. And there's a stigma of, Kirk Cousins is going to lose his job. Why? I mean, he threw 35 touchdowns last year. Yeah, the Vikings aren't that good as far as making the playoffs, but, they're mediocre and could take a step up if, they get the right pieces. Kirk Cousins in fantasy football, at least, is a guy that you may want to add. And then the last ad I wanted to suggest, Justin Fields. Some people drafted him. It's kind of half and half. He's owned in 48% of leagues. Fields worked in, got his first NFL touchdown as a rushing touchdown. So the Bears and Matt Nagy, it's pretty obvious that he wants to put Justin Fields in there. But I don't know whether it's like ego or veteran deference or what it is, but he's giving the nod to Andy Dalton. The drops, though, Ryan Fitzpatrick, this is pretty obvious. I mean, he suffered a hip injury. He's going to be out for multiple weeks. Taylor Heinicke's going to take over. I don't think you should have owned Ryan Fitzpatrick in the first place in your fantasy league, but 25% of you did, and you should drop him. And then the last drop that I have, Daniel Jones. The numbers might be a little bit skewed. He scored a touchdown on the last play of the game against the Denver Broncos when it was already the score didn't matter in the outcome of the game, and it was a rushing touchdown, so he got a lot more points out of that. But if that touchdown wasn't scored, you'd have only scored 15 fantasy points. Not worth having him on your roster. Running backs, the mustads. Ooh, you guys love those narrations. Elijah Mitchell is the top target that you guys need to target. Raheem Mostert is out. Now, when I say that Elijah Mitchell is the top target for running backs, it's because running backs are just so freaking valuable that you need depth early on because you don't know the trajectory of the season, which of your running backs are going to get hurt. Now, Elijah Mitchell, you're going to get a backup running back. Trey Sermon, I feel like, is going to be the starter, is going to get the majority of the carries. Elijah Mitchell will be working in there. He got 19 carries this past week. That's going to go down just because Trey Sermon wasn't involved in the game plan. He's going to go down. He might get a role more like JaMychal Hasty had against the Detroit Lions this past Sunday. But Mitchell should be on your radar. Kenneth Gainwell as well. There's an offseason report that said that Miles Sanders is not a 3-down back, and that was true. When Kenneth Gainwell worked into the game plan, got 9 carries, got a touchdown as well, is known to be more of a receiving back. And the fact that he got those rushing attempts on top of that, Kenneth Gainwell is one guy that you need to look out for. Tony Jones of the New Orleans Saints is my last ad. He is owned in 14% of leagues. Even if he didn't have that, he was put in the game last minute because the Saints were just blowing them out. So he got 4 straight carries in that game. But besides those 4 straight carries in the first 3 quarters or so, Tony Jones got 7 carries in 3 quarters. So he has that Latavius Murray type of role. And if you're an Alvin Kamara owner, you have to get Tony Jones. Some honorable mention, or one honorable mention, I want to say, don't fall for Mark Ingram. He had 24 carries. I understand that. But the game was so out of hand. What makes you think that the Texans are going to be up by so much in almost every game this season that they're going to continue to run with Mark Ingram? Not going to happen. They're going to go with Phillip Lindsay and David Johnson as their receiving backs more times than not. So let everybody else add Mark Ingram. If you want to add him, sure, get some running back depth just in case. But I'm telling you, it's going to be the Phillip Lindsay and David Johnson show for the majority of the season this year. Players that you need to drop. Gus Edwards, this is pretty obvious. I'm not going to go into that. He's injured, but 36% of you still own him, so that's why I brought him up. Giovanni Bernard. I mean, he wasn't even on my draft board, on my rankings, because I didn't figure that he was going to make it that much of a factor and he wasn't going to be draft relevant. He's not. That proved it. Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. As a matter of fact, in the pass-catching game, it was Leonard Fournette over Giovanni Bernard. I would drop him. And then Devontae Freeman, he's only owned in 6% of leagues, but you should drop him just because it's a running back by committee there. Tyson Williams is the only Baltimore running back that I would like to own. Maybe Latavius Murray. Besides that, nah, I'm done with it. Wide receivers, the must-adds. Sterling Shepard owned at 20% of leagues. He was 7 out of 9 targets for 113 yards and a touchdown. Maybe if Kenny Galladay gets a little bit better, those numbers will decline, but Sterling Shepard is an add if you need some receiver depth. Tim Patrick owned at 0.6% of leagues. He's going to take a step up with Jerry Jeudy there. You could also say KJ Hamler could take a step up. Yes, he will, but Tim Patrick was the go-to guy for Teddy Bridgewater. 4 out of 4, 4 receptions for 4 targets in that game against the Giants. Bryan Edwards looked solid, especially towards the last stretch in that game against the Raiders. He's a must-add, owned in 15% of leagues. 4 out of 5 targets for 81 yards. And Terrace Marshall is another underneath the radar kind of guy. I'm going to mention 4 adds, 2 drops. Terrace Marshall's the last add, 3 out of 6 targets for 26 yards. Doesn't seem like the stat line is that great, but if you watch the game, he was targeted in the end zone. So Sam Darnold has Terrace Marshall on his radar. The must drops, AJ Green owned at 30% of leagues, only had 2 receptions. And I know that, the name value is there. Kyler Murray in that high-powered offense, I get it. But Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore are going to be the go-to guys besides DeAndre Hopkins. As a matter of fact, Christian Kirk, he could be a must-add this week. He very well could, but I would want to see how that Cardinals offense operates versus who truly is the number 2 receiver. And Kirk didn't get a lot of targets off the production that he got. So, add him if you want, but I'm not too high on it this week. Randall Cobb. I mentioned this last week. You're never going to play Randall Cobb. Never. Why is he owned in 29% of leagues? Devontae Adams, Robert Tonyan, Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. The only guys that I would own in that Green Bay Packers offense. And Aaron Rodgers, obviously. Other than that, drop them. Tight ends. The must-adds. James O'Shaughnessy, a guy that a lot of people don't know about. He's worth a flyer. If you have an extra bench spot, take James O'Shaughnessy if you need some tight end depth. Only owned in 0.2% of leagues. He was 6 out of 8. Had 8 targets go his way, made 6 receptions for 48 yards. Manhurst scored the touchdown for the tight ends, but he only had 1 target, and that 1 target was a touchdown. So I like O'Shaughnessy. Jared Cook, I said to drop him last week. I apologize if that was the case. If he's still out there, you can still get him. I don't think he's going to be a hot commodity. Had 8 targets against the Washington football team for 56 yards. And then Tyler Higbee. He's more owned in 72% of leagues, so he's still kind of on the waivers, but I would add him. He was targeted a lot. He's going to be incorporated in the Rams offense. 5 receptions out of 6 targets for 68 yards. The must drops for tight ends. Zach Ertz, I liked him as a streaming option, but I mean, I want to say that he does get targeted a lot by Jalen Hurts, but last week against the Atlanta Falcons, I mean, it kind of proved that Zach Ertz, you're okay with leaving him on the waivers. If you absolutely need him, pick him up, but you can drop him. Eric Ebron, we mentioned this. Pat Freiermuth was also labeled as tight end 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Ebron, his value goes down. Anthony Firkser, I don't know why you even own him. Drop him. Kickers, the must-add. Okay. The one fantasy player that you need to own that can change your whole fantasy football lineup this year, you won't believe it, it's a kicker, Evan McPherson. Before the draft, I was so big on him, I had him labeled as a top 10 kicker, right? I ended up not taking him just because of the way the draft went. And, okay, I had 10 kickers higher than him, so I'm going to take someone like Rodrigo Blankenship instead. And then I saw Evan McPherson actually play. And I know there's not a lot of scouting out there for kickers, but the form of Evan McPherson and how accurate he was, and the fact that he was a high draft pick for the Bengals, a 5th-round pick, and how successful he was in Florida, McPherson, I feel like, is going to be the next Justin Tucker. I'm on record of saying that. He's going to be freaking accurate, and the Bengals offense is that sweet offense that doesn't score too much, but they can still move down the field and get a lot of field goal opportunities. So if you have a top 10 kicker, I wouldn't drop anyone for Evan McPherson. I wouldn't drop like Ryan Suckup or Greg Zuerlein or, obviously not Harrison Butker, Younghoe Koo, all of those people. But McPherson, if you need kicker depth, pick him up. Josh Lambo. Oh, no. Sorry about that. Robbie Gould. Robbie Gould is also another kicker that you may want to pick up. And then Dustin Hopkins. He's a good streaming option this week. The Giants gave up 2 field goals and 3 extra points against the Broncos. So, Washington, Dustin Hopkins. The must drops, Graham Gano. Why is ESPN so high on Graham Gano? He was bottom, I think he was ranked like somewhere between the 25 to 30 range on my rankings, but he was top 5 on ESPN. I'm like, I don't know about that, man. And then he only scored 1 point. And that's why, because the Giants just don't move down the field. So Graham Gano owned in 84% of leagues. Please drop him. Josh Lambo, I told you to pick him up as a streaming option. I apologize. I did not expect that. But, Josh Lambo for this week, you could drop him. And if he does good, then you could pick him up later. I don't think he's going to be a hot commodity. And then Jason Myers, another guy that ESPN is so high on. I like Myers much more than Graham Gano, but the Seahawks offense just scores way too much. You don't get a lot of field goal opportunities out of Jason Myers. Defensive special teams, the must-adds. The Cardinals' defense looks amazing. The Saints, they're facing the Panthers this week. Could be a good streaming option. And then the Patriots, they're facing the Jets. They're owned in 71% of leagues, so it might be harder to find them. But the must-drops, the Dolphins, their schedule coming up. Buffalo, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Tampa Bay. Okay, Las Vegas and Indianapolis, it could be hit or miss. But Buffalo and Tampa Bay, for sure, I don't trust the Dolphins. The Packers defense did not look good against the Saints. And then the last drop, the Minnesota Vikings. That defense is expectations are going down. And against the Arizona Cardinals this week, I do not trust them. So those are your adds and drops. If you have any sort of comments and players that you may want to add and drop, go ahead and comment those below. You guys are still chiming in. Brian Edwards, Alberto, I mentioned him as a wide receiver must add. I don't know when you tuned in, but he is an ad on my list. Kirk is number 2, I bet. Beasley is fired. This is by Dem Boys. I was going to draft him, but got beat. As a late round receiver, I agree. And then kind of going off of that Christian Kirk mantra, Al Fraser says that Christian Kirk might be a sleeper. He could. It's DeAndre Hopkins. And then after that, it's like, okay, who has the hot hand? And it's just hard to trust Christian Kirk. When we do our rankings, the standard deviation and how consistent he is, he's not one of the more consistent players in the NFL. So, and consistency matters. Unless you want to take a flyer on a flex play. But we'll see. Anyways, now I want to spend the next segment talking about some players that should be on the trade market and whether you should buy them, hold them, or sell them in fantasy football just after week 1 and going into week 2. So the first one, let's start with quarterbacks. I'm going to give you one for each. I'm going to give you a buy, a sell, and a hold for all the positions except kickers and defense because no one really trades them. But quarterbacks, let's start off with that. Buy Justin Herbert. 13 fantasy points against the Washington football team. Had a tough matchup. Has a potential to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. His value is so low right now. If you need a quarterback, trade for Justin Herbert. I would say a player that you have to hold right now is Aaron Rodgers. He had one of the worst games of his career, but he's going to bounce back. That's without question. So that's one of the worst outings ever. And I actually had a lot of people commenting and messaging me saying, oh, what do I do about Aaron Rodgers? Is it time to panic? Because they had this whole offseason drama. And do I have to drop him for maybe someone like Jameis Winston? Or no, guys, don't overreact. Aaron Rodgers will be fine. In a sell at quarterback, I actually did not write anything down. I thought I did. But hey, go ahead and give me your opinions. Give me your suggestions. What's a quarterback that you would like to sell on the trade market while his value is pretty high up? I would say Jalen Hurts. Personally, 27 fantasy points, but I'm also super big on Jalen Hurts. So I think he's still going to produce and get a lot of good games. It just won't be as consistent. You won't get 27 points every week. But if you want to sell him for maybe like a wide receiver 2, a running back 2, flex play, anything like that, if you got quarterback depth. Running backs. some players that you need to buy right now at the running back position. Uh, my top target for the running back is James Robinson. Buy James Robinson right now. People are going to look at the stats. People are going to look at Carlos Hyde got a lot more carries than James Robinson. He only had 5 rushes. Robinson did. J. Rob was not involved in the offense. That's false. Yes, he was. He was on the field twice as much, twice more than Carlos Hyde. He was involved in the passing game. Trevor Lawrence just wasn't accurate. He was 3 receptions out of 6 targets. And the game script just changed. You are running from behind, so you have to pass the ball, and you're not going to get a lot of targets out of that. So buy James Robinson right now while his value is so low. He's still a 3-down back. Carlos Hyde is going to get some carries. Yes, that's expected. That's okay. But James Robinson, for the majority, the most part, he's expected to be a 3-down back. Must sell. Saquon Barkley, sell them. Sell this guy right now because going into the draft, this is why I had labeled Saquon Barkley as a second-round pick, and I urged everyone. I was like, don't listen to ESPN. Don't listen to them. Has a top 5 pick. And I was like, okay, well, maybe this is early on. We don't know if Saquon Barkley is going to play. For the majority of the offseason, from July until September, top 5 pick for Saquon Barkley. Why? Why? It was offseason reports. You have to listen to offseason reports saying that he was going to be limited. We knew this since the end of July, that he was going to split time with Devontae Booker at least for the first few weeks. And that's going to hurt you in fantasy football. Do not draft him. But he was a top 5 pick for most people. His ADP was pretty high up. I would sell him right now. Sell him to someone that's like, oh, Saquon can come back and he could have a good season because of his name value. He's a good player. Sell it to that guy for something high. I would hold on to Myles Gaskin. He's in a timeshare right now, but he had 5 receptions for the Miami Dolphins. So that kind of gives me hope. Just hold on to Myles Gaskin for now. For wide receivers, a player I would buy in right now, Terry McLaurin. With Fitzpatrick hurt, I think that a lot of people are going to think that, oh, well, he's not going to get a lot of targets. He only had 4 catches this week against the I almost said San Francisco, then San Diego, LA Chargers. And his value is just the lowest right now than it will ever be. So buy in on Terry McLaurin. Sell Julio Jones. The name value should be a determining factor in selling Julio Jones. If you can sell Julio Jones for James Robinson, that is my encouragement for you guys that need running back depth and you have Julio Jones. Sell Julio Jones, that's your homework, for James Robinson. Trade him. Get James Robinson out of it. You'll be very, very happy with that result. And then hold on to Marquez Callaway. I almost put him on the sell list, dude. Almost. I've never been big on the hype on Marquez Callaway. Not that I don't think he's a good receiver, but we labeled him as the number 1 receiver. And from what merit? Because he looked good in the preseason? Because he had 1 good game? No, we knew that this, or at least I kind of figured that this Saints offense was going to spread the ball around. And guess what happened? You had a guy named Juwan Johnson, a tight end, get 2 touchdowns off of 2 catches. Okay, Deontay Harris scored a touchdown as well. It's going to be that kind of offense in New Orleans until Michael Thomas gets back. So Marquez Callaway, I want to sell him, but just hold on to him just for now because I'll give you guys the benefit of the doubt. Let's see. I'll make you guys happy. Hold on to him. And for tight ends, player that you need to buy right now, Mark Andrews, top 5 tight end, had a bad game against the Raiders. Now's the time to say, hey, he only had 3 receptions. He's on the decline. Let me get Mark Andrews right now. Sell Austin Hooper. I know he wasn't a high draft pick for many people, but he played 38% of the snaps for the Cleveland Browns, and he only had 3 targets, while David Njoku played 35% of the Cleveland Browns, and he had 5 targets. So less snaps, more targets shows that Njoku is more favored by Mayfield, or at least got open more times than not, and was able to make a reception. So I like Njoku way more than I like Austin Hooper. And then hold on to Mike Gesicki. He was targeted so low because of the injuries that they had to Austin Jackson on that offensive line. Only had 2 targets. So because of that injury, then Mike Gesicki, he's not well known as a blocking tight end. That's been his struggle in college and in the NFL. They used Durham Smythe, who's more of a better blocking tight end, on more snaps. I think it was 38 snaps for Smythe and then like 25 or something like that for Mike Gesicki. So don't look too much into it. Hold on to Mike Gesicki. I think he's going to have a rebound. At least give him a couple more weeks, and then we'll see. Now, we've got fantasy football questions that we're going to be answering for you guys. I'm just going to spend a few minutes on this. Al Fraser says Gesicki isn't worth it. Okay. I mean, you could drop him, and I don't think a lot of people would, unless it's like a 4-team league, then yeah, they might pick him up, but I don't think anybody's going to be rushing to pick him off the waivers. For the grade, he told you not to drop Chris Boswell. Yeah, I still would have dropped him. I mean, this week, yeah, I don't know if he was on the sit list. If he was, I missed that on my part. But for the season, I still would not put my trust in Chris Boswell. There are way more better kickers out there for fantasy football that you could draft. Daniel Orton says, buy Zeke. Yes, he was also debated on my buy list. I eventually went with James Robinson just because I don't think an Ezekiel Elliott owner that invested a top 6 pick in him, top 8, whatever ADP he was, is going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll get rid of Ezekiel Elliott just like that, just because he sucks after one game. I think they're going to be like, no, this is like my first-round investment. I'm going to invest in him. Well, James Robinson might be a little more of like a 4th-round pick for a lot of people. And so they're like, okay, what's the harm? I'll just get rid of him and see if I can get a decent Julio Jones for James Robinson. Do it, man. Do it. Just do it. Remember that? Throwback. What else we got here? Do you think Jared Goff could break out? This is by Al Fraser again. Man, against a 49ers defense. Hey, 49ers, tough team. Jared Goff had a lot of opportunities after onside kick, after turnover. And his numbers were a little bit inflated because of that. So could he break out? Yeah, I think he's a pretty decent quarterback. I don't think he's bad at all. I'm just concerned about that offense. So unless it's just TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift having 11 targets every single game, I don't know. I wouldn't put too much stock into it, but we'll see. We've got Deluxe Krang Plays saying Jacobs and Brandon Cooks for Evans. Should I pull the trigger? Are you getting Jacobs and Cooks, or are you getting Evans? If you're getting Jacobs and Cooks, whoever gets that trade, that too, do it. Sell Mike Evans. I almost had Mike Evans on the sell list as well. But if you can get Jacobs, who I'm not too big on this year, but Brandon Cooks, I like a lot more than people are giving him credit for. So I would do it. You need to realize also that what's the word? The point spread between wide receivers, like wide receiver 2s that are like Mike Evans, Julio Jones, Allen Robinson, that kind of category, that tier, compared to later round receivers like Brandon Cooks, Corey Davis, it's not that big of a margin. So I would gladly like to stream my wide receiver 2 if it meant that I got a running back in my flex spot that I can play every week. Just food for thought. We are running a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and take maybe 1 or 2 more. All right. So Ashton Gatlin. I can't read. Drop Beckham or nah? Not yet. I'm not too high on Odell Beckham, but there's no need to drop him unless you're like in a 4-team league, where it's just so freaking deep. No need to drop Odell Beckham for now. Hold on to him. I'm going to go ahead and end the show right now. But for you guys that are asking start and sit advice as well, just remember we've got a start and sit video coming out later today. I'm going to try to get it out. Do my best to try to get it out tonight. And then you guys can go over there and leave your comments and let us know your thoughts on those starts and sits. We appreciate you guys joining us for this live show. Leave your comments, leave your questions, leave your thoughts, and your opinions as well. With all that said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Starts and sits video tonight. Can't wait. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.